You may not know this, but recently the Save The Rhino charity turned 25 years old. So what a perfect excuse for me to talk to you about rhinos, current rhino conservation projects, and what you can do to help this quite stunning animal. Followers of our channel will be aware that a few years back we were very fortunate to be involved in making some films to Save the Rhino, as well as writing a piece for their blog. For us personally, it was an eye-widening, mind-opening experience as we delved deeper and deeper into the complex world of rhino conservation. The films, which I will link below, did excellently by all accounts and were watched by thousands of people. So we hope, at the very least, we managed to inspire a new generation of rhino fans and supporters. However, with that said, I am acutely aware that rhino conservation efforts need more than just an odd mention here and there, which is why I've decided to make this film today. Sadly, the problem of the horn trade is not going away for the foreseeable, and therefore we need to keep pushing and pushing the issues and keep it at the forefront of people's minds. But why should you care? I mean, especially here in the UK where rhinos are not native and we really have little to no interaction with them. Why should it be our problem? What many of us, myself included once upon a time, fail to understand is the true depth of the dark, dingy and violent world of the animal trade. Whether that be the trade of rhino horn, ivory, pelts, etc. The most obvious concern firstly is the abhorrent, unjustifiable murder of animals, a murder rate which runs into the thousands. In 2017, over 1,200 rhinos alone were killed just for their horn. As a result, rhino numbers have been driven down to the point of near extinction. As humans with compassion and empathy, you and I are struck with utter disgust and sorrow when we hear the stories of slaughter, or see photos of mass animal killings. And this killing is truly barbaric, to the point, for example, where if poachers have killed a pregnant cow, they have been known not only to remove the cow's horn, but to cut her open, remove the unborn calf, and carve off its horn stub too. It is truly brutal. I put it to you, who amongst us wouldn't want to help put a stop to that? If it's not for us, who else is going to help put an end to these barbaric acts? However, there is even more to this, something which affects you a lot closer to home. One of the hardest things about rallying support in the UK for overseas animal conservation projects, as I mentioned earlier, is quite simply getting people to care. I mean, who could blame them? We do have enough of our own problems here at home. Well, it may surprise you to learn that a lot of your closer to home concerns are directly associated with the horn and ivory trade. To understand this, we have to look at the purpose and the reasons behind the horn trade. A reason that is actually quite simple. It's all about the money. As is well publicised, rhino is sold to collectors and is sold to those who believe that rhino horn has a magical medicinal quality. In some countries it is even used to cure hangovers. It goes without saying that it has been proven that rhino horn has no impact whatsoever on any ailments or any illnesses. The money generated from this trade though is astronomical. One report from a UK-based newspaper quotes that on the black market, a kilogram of rhino horn is worth anywhere from $100,000 plus. It's a lucrative market, and the earnings made by persons selling that product is substantial, and is by and large an easy way to generate quick money. Who are the people selling the horns though, or rather persons? A number of horn smugglers have been caught, have been discovered to have links with criminal organisations. Organisations such as Boko Haram, who are a terrorist group based in Somalia with links to Al-Qaeda. The money that they raise from ivory and horn smuggling is effectively like pocket money, a continual stream of funds to help facilitate and maintain their terrorist agenda. It's the money from rhinos, from elephants, that then goes on to pay for the equipment they use. Equipment for suicide bombings, for guns and weapons which are used to carry out horrendous atrocities, just like the one seen in Kenya, a country which we visited a mere 6 months ago. The money is then being spread throughout the terrorist network, even back to groups and supporters here in the UK. The money generated also supports criminal groups invested in drug cultivation and supply. The same drugs which end up on our streets and whose users end up in our already overstretched hospitals, which you as the taxpayer subsequently pay for. The same drugs which ignite gang violence in our towns and cities. The same drugs which cost people their lives. To put it into perspective, in 2013, Save the Rhino reported that Rhino Horn could be supplying up to 40% of the funds needed to keep some of these organisations in business. When I said it's like pocket money, it's a damn load of pocket money. But this is just the tip of the iceberg, and as you can see, it is a hugely complex issue. How do you deal with this spider web when there are just so many separate little entities all being funded from the merciless killing of animals? Well, fortunately, this is where charities like Save the Rhino step in, and where we, as the public, need to step up. Unfortunately, battling this problem is expensive, very expensive. These days, rhino poachers are going to extreme lengths using advanced equipment to hunt rhinos. They're using everything from thermal imaging cameras, to helicopters, to high-spec weaponry. It's akin to a military outfit, and realistically, not one that the rangers can compete against forcefully or really ethically. Rangers obviously play a hugely important role in keeping rhinos safe, tirelessly patrolling the national parks and tracking down these criminals. They work tirelessly around the clock and quite literally put their lives on the line. All their equipment, however, is funded by charities, by donations, so that they can keep doing what they are doing. Without mine, without yours, without our support, there would be no feet on the ground tackling this problem. No one out there on the front lines of rhino conservation. The problem we have that in a lot of countries where rhino poaching is an issue, the countries themselves are very poor, whether through corruption or just lack of a good economic state. They simply can't invest in rhino conservation. It is therefore our responsibility, I believe, as nations who are more fortunate and with a much better GDP, to invest in trying to protect these animals. You may argue we should put the money to use in our own country, but I personally would not like to just stand there and watch an animal go extinct because we failed to act. I strongly believe that protecting animals and protecting ecosystems is a world problem which everybody who can be should be involved in. Therefore, as I said, it is very fortunate that we have a number of animal charities who act as a sort of conduit and can pump money from donations and grants to organisations across the world concerned in these conservation efforts. The money generated by grants and by us, the public, is also used for research projects, because as I said, you cannot win this war by simply going head to head with the poachers. And the poachers really are just a small portion of the problem. This research comes in many forms. Research about how to deal with the problems of rhino trade and how best we should deal with it in the future. For example, should all rhino horn that's been seized be burnt, as we've seen before, so it can't be traded anymore? Or in doing that, do we actually drive up the price of rhino horn because it has become a much more valuable rare commodity because there is now less of it? Maybe we should flood a legitimate market with rhino horn and legalise the trade, which would bring the price down as it would no longer be rare nor that difficult to obtain. But where would the parameters be? Would the amount of horn in trade at the very moment it became legal be it a finite amount? Or do we need to keep topping up the levels of horn in the market to keep the supply and demand balanced? Would this all just make it easier for gangs to kill and sell rhino horn without any real repercussions? One of the biggest projects over in Vietnam and China where rhino horn is used in medicines is making rhino horn become a socially unacceptable product. If we legalise it, if we legalise this trade, it will undo all that hard work, because all that will happen is that they will use the horn for medicines and they will keep needing more and more, and the demand would still be huge. Maybe we should try dyeing the rhino horn, which in turn would spoil its value. However, research has concluded that this time it simply doesn't work, as the dye is easy to remove, and actually rhinos are very difficult to capture humanely. As for the poachers themselves, Should we imprison them? Some people have even gone as far as to suggest the death penalty for poachers. Well, again, it's a difficult issue. Poachers tend to be mere puppets for larger organisations, desperate people who are just trying to make a living to support their families with the promise of big money for doing what they are doing. Get rid of one poacher and another one steps up in their place. We have to therefore focus beyond the poacher. We have to look at education and employment, provide people the opportunity to get into better jobs, drive them away from poaching in the first place. The issue of poaching is a community problem. From the rhino itself and us being able to provide safe areas for them to roam in, right up to the government of these countries. For they need to start putting money into education, they need to start putting money into professions so we can drive people away from poaching in the first place. As you can see, rhino conservation is a massive problem, and it all has to be coordinated and implemented, which in itself is a difficult task. It's because every rhino population has a different need. We have 5 rhino species, 3 of which are critically endangered and 2 of which are threatened. We have the Sumatran rhino from Indonesia and Malaysia, the Javan rhino from Indonesia, the black rhino from various African countries, the greater one-horned rhino from India and Nepal, and the white rhino, again, from various African countries. There is sometimes a common misconception that rhinos only live in Africa, and as you can see, that is not the case. Each of these species therefore requires a different response from conservationists because their personal needs are so varied and diverse. It's not just one solution to solve it all, unfortunately. I hope I've illustrated to you the difficulties in rhino conservation and why it's actually a problem which affects you whether you thought it did or not. Some people would argue that it would just be easier to let the species die out as a whole. But this is an incredible animal who has every right to be on this earth. An animal being killed by us. An animal who cannot defend itself against guns, against chainsaws, an animal who provides an ecosystem for countless other species, an animal which deserves its life. It is our duty as humans to preserve this planet and everything that has made this planet its home. So I implore you, help. Help support these animal charities, charities such as Save the Rhino. Something as simple as buying a t-shirt or putting a shout out on your social media page can make all the difference because every little helps. Go and find out more about the trade, as believe it or not, I've hardly covered anything. And together we will become a part of something much bigger, because together we will save the rhino. Thank you.